So let's get rocking. So how can HR radically influence the culture? So we'll quickly go around the room and just see who we have in the room, so you know who you're around before we go into a breakout room. And we are really talking today about how HR can influence the culture. We are really passionate about supporting HR to be able to massively and really be influential with the culture, and whether that is influencing leadership or whether that is influencing out on the shop floor, and what can they do to make sure that they can influence the culture. So we'll just let Shazia in there. She's been in before, so she knows the run of things. Morning, Shazia. Welcome, welcome. So we're Hello Performance. We're a workplace culture consultancy. Here is two of our clients, Bailey of Bristol. They have moved engagement and culture massively in the last 4 years. They're just about to do their next survey next month, so we're excited to see the next round of results and see how they are going. This was a post from them on LinkedIn, where they were saying from our survey and the things that they did, and they were sharing that live on LinkedIn to say what they have actioned. And they have town halls, which they didn't have before. They have defined their values. They have prizes and awards for recognition around their values, which is really, really gorgeous. So they are a caravan and manufacturing. They have like 500 employees, and they've really raised it, the profile of culture in their organization. Mickey on the right is another part of our Culture Smart Accelerator, and she was setting up a remote team in Poland. She's based in the Netherlands. She had a remote team of 30 people. They started with 0 people and they grew. Now I think their aim was to get 30. I think they're now nearly 40. And she really wanted to be part of our Culture Accelerator, to know how to design and set up a culture from the beginning to make sure it was magic, and that their results are really going great as well. So we have Rachel coming back in. So we did a LinkedIn poll. We do many LinkedIn polls. We think they're great sources of information. Does your organization recognize HR as a pivotal force in molding and fostering the workplace culture? 44% said no, that they do not recognize HR as a pivotal force. We believe HR is actually the doorway to a fantastic culture, that they can underpin and ensure that it is really designed well. And we talk about designing a culture. It's like a house. The better the design, the better the culture. And HR are really crucial in that. We did another poll. I need to move the little faces out the way there. We did another poll that was this week. Is HR's role in shaping workplace culture often underestimated? And 87% said yes. So that tells us that we really need to raise the profile of HR in their role around workplace culture. So that drove and rose the passion even further in Hello Performance to say, oh my God, if 87% are saying, yes, we need to support HR and make sure that they are getting the support they need to raise the profile around culture. So if any of you have been on one of these calls before, I'm sure I've lectured this quote at you, and I will lecture it again. There's always a culture. We get one with whatever we do, so we can either choose to influence it or take our chances. So we are all a talk about designing and consciously influencing the culture, that is the way to success and bringing that about. So I am going to ask you a question now, and I'm going to put you into 2 breakout rooms and just share with each other what you see the top obstacle to HR in shaping a culture. What is their top obstacle that HR face in really shaping the culture? Just share what you guys came across, what you were talking about. Anna, do you want to come off? You're on mute. Yeah, that mute, that killer
I do it
still
every
catches us.
Never mind. If I'm consistent at anything, it's about talking while I'm on mute. Anyway,
Yeah.
what was interesting with the three of us is that we've all been through sort of a cultural change in our companies over the last sort of 3 to 5 years, and I think we've all sort of experienced this. How you explain the value of something that you can't see, touch, feel, and that sort of thing, how it impacts the overall work, and who is actually responsible for the delivery and the ownership of it. So it's a little bit like the who will help me make the bread. Everybody wants to eat the bread, but nobody wants to collect the seeds. And it's getting that engagement from the leadership. Well, it's from the very top down, but it's getting that engagement right the way across the board. Have I missed anything? No.
She did a good job, Amy. Good. Fantastic. So the engagement across leadership, that accountability and who is accountable for it. And what, that was the first part, Anna, the first thing you said as well.
I talk. Did I talk about safety in the change of the old ways?
No.
Oh, so there was that, but it's around getting people to understand the value of culture because they can't feel it or see it or
Yeah,
touch it or anything like that.
absolutely.
It's not a
Yeah.
KPI of number of phone calls received from customers or anything
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is that is a very common feeling of like that fluffy culture, that nice stuff. Oh, let's make us all happy. And that is taking that fluffy, arbitrary culture and bring it down to brass tacks on something we can measure, show, and demonstrate that it is a massive benefit to the business and how it's a benefit to the business.
Yeah.
Fantastic, Anna. Thank you for that.
Thank
And
you.
Rachel and Satish and Shazia, would one of you come on and share what you were talking about in the other group?
Hi there. Hi.
Thanks, Rachel.
Yeah, so I'll talk for the group because I think one of our group members is driving. So yeah, we just discussed that leadership alignment is obviously key in developing that culture. Sometimes there can be a lack of commitment as well from the
Mm,
top. Obviously starts at the top with the leaders pushing for for a strong, healthy culture. Um, so yeah, that's sort of stuff that we touched on around
super.
aligning. Basically,
Yeah.
everyone's on the same page.
And so much more difficult, Rachel, when they're not aligned and on the same page, and that lack of commitment then. So good. So we'll touch a little bit on how we can get that leadership alignment,
And
how
I'm sorry, Rachel forgot another point as well. We have spoken about the poor communication.
Oh yeah.
mm,
When it, yeah, so
absolutely.
this was
And,
the
and
2 points we discussed. Sorry.
And Satish, when you mean communication, do you mean communication from the leadership? Do you communication across the company, between departments? What do you mean by communication?
It's a communication between the employees, about the reasons for the cultural change, what is the desired outcomes and the specific steps involved can lead to a confusion and resistance if you do a inadequate communication.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So embracing what is happening and the direction we're going and bringing people on the journey through communication. So Satish, that is so true. Communication is really key if you're driving any cultural change. And I would ask you to change. We're humans, and when we hear that word change, psychologically, we immediately recoil because actually, as humans, we don't like change. We recoil from change. So we always talk about a culture shift, that we're shifting the culture because you generally don't change it from like yellow to red. You don't change it massive. What you're doing is you're shifting it along a continuum. I'm going to drop my pen because I look like I'm teaching. You're going along a continuum, and it's the direction you want that continuum to go in. So sometimes that continuum goes downhill and the culture gets bad, but it's a continuation, it's a flow. And sometimes it continues as it is and maintains, but sometimes we can make a positive influence on that culture and move it towards a more positive outcome. So that's what we're doing. We're shifting the culture. So we talk about culture shift, but communication all through that and telling people what they're doing is absolutely key. And that customer we talked about at the beginning, Bailey of Bristol, one of that came out of their survey was communication was a real gap. So they have taken that as one of their top 3 priorities. Now, the really great tip, choose just 3 things you're going to focus on, nothing more. And they said, we're going to improve that. And they brought in town halls. They brought in a business update for the staff. And they really are able to use that now to really inspire about where we're going, what our purpose is. They're big on sustainability. They're showing the successes of the company, but also they share on the awards. Johnny from the warehouse got an award because he was living this value and these behaviors, and this is the story, and this is what he did. So they're also selling the culture on there and the value of it. So communication is really, really key. Leadership alignment is key. And HR have a big role to play there. So let's get going. So there's 5 stages to a great culture. This is our methodology that we use. We talk about intel. So knowing where the culture is at today. What are those gorgeous things about the culture that we want to keep? What are those gems? We talk about gems. And what are the shadows, those negatives that you want to eliminate? So talking to a company yesterday, we have a new member in our Culture Smart, and she was just like, gossiping. We need to get rid of gossiping. It happens so much, and it's one of the shadows that we're going to focus on and getting rid of. So what are those gems and what are the shadows? And that's continuum. It's where are you starting from now? If we don't know where we're starting, we'll never work out where we're going. Because remember, we have to meet the company where they're at. We need to meet the organization. That's where they are, and then go from there. So knowing that intel, where are you right now? Then designing the culture. So what is that purpose? Why do we come in on a Monday morning? What is that purpose? Why do we exist as an organization above making profit? What is the organization? What are those values? What's important to us around here? And some of them we might be really living, and some of them we mightn't be living so well. So that's going to be our culture project. That's going to be our culture change. That's going to be our culture shift, as it is our language we want to use. So what are those values that are important to us, and which ones are we going to drive forward? And then translating that into behaviors. So the values tell us what's important. So honesty is important, or authenticity, or getting work done is important to us. Whatever is a customer excellence, excellence might be important to us. Whatever is those you've picked out that's important to you, translating that into behaviors. So as a new worker, how do you want me to be honest? What does that mean? Excellence. What do you want? Customer satisfaction. Customers come first is another great value I've come across. But what does that mean? What do you want me to do? So that's the behaviors part, and that's the teachable and measurable behaviors. That's really key. Then how do you bring it alive is the activation. How do you bring it into the words so you see it, hear it, and feel it? We touched on that there with Anna. And then embedding it, making it part of every single process in the employee life cycle, but also the process within the companies. Meetings, how are we coaching managers on it? How are we reboarding staff so that the ones that are there a long time are also brought alive about the culture? How do we do our hiring, onboarding, and how do we hold people accountable to that culture? That is a real key one. So touching back on who's responsible for it, we say every manager is responsible for the culture. So anyone who has responsibility, when I say manager, I mean team leader, I mean supervisor, manager, leader, anyone who has a responsibility for their team is accountable. So let's quickly go on. So they're the 5 stages to a great culture. We must move my thing out the way. So let's move on. So tip number 1. Introduce a low-hanging fruit for productivity. So here we're going to start talking the language that speaks to the leadership. They want numbers. They want facts. Taking this fluffy stuff and bringing it down. We have a low-hanging fruit in culture for productivity, a massive, massive opportunity. So let us share. So nearly 7 in 10 employees are quietly quitting. So this is from the Gallup study. So Gallup is one of the largest organizations on employee engagement, and they do a global research every year, and they issue a report about what is the state of engagement and culture. So in Europe, 7 in 10 employees are quietly quitting. So what does quietly quitting mean? They're becoming disengaged, but they're not leaving the job. They're staying in the company. And why is that right now? It's because, you know, we have this high cost of living, massive increase in the cost of living. We've got a bit of instability and volatility in the market. I'm not quite sure I want to leave, but I'm kind of checking out. So you've checked out, but you're staying in the organization. So disengage remainers, 7 in 10 employees. That is shocking, shocking news. And engagement or culture is cited as the top reason over pay or well-being. So hello, leadership. We've got 7 in 10 employees checking out, doing the bare minimum, and engagement and culture is one of the top reasons. So, hey, here is a great reason for us to tackle this. So the global report, they had 13% are thriving at work. Europe is the lowest rated region in the world. South Asia was the highest. They had 33% thriving at work. Europe, 13%. What are we doing here in Europe? Europe, we're not doing very well. 13%. That is shocking. And here is our opportunity for productivity. These quiet quitters, 72% are in this region of, we're not really massively actively engaged. We're not moaning, and we're not the loud quitters down here. Oh God, we got sparkles with me, my hands. This is the new Zoom. I've obviously downloaded. But 72%. So a really great opportunity for productivity here. Imagine if we could get some more of these engaged, how much productivity would increase. And that goes for salaried workers, hourly workers, desk-based, non-desk-based. The loud quitters are the ones that vocalize and can really undermine any project in an organization. The quiet quitters, they're also the ones that suffer more with stress, and they're also the ones more likely to leave, more than the loud quitters. So if we think of our organization like a boat, and if we have 13% rowing in the right direction, 72% admiring the view, and then these 15 of disengaged, who are these loud quitters who are trying to sink the boat, we won't go very far, or it's a hard slog for these 13%. So the chances are these 13% will give up if we're battling against the tide all the time. So this is our opportunity. How can we get the ones admiring the view to be rowing in that same direction? And they can be swayed very easily either way. They can either go disengaged down to trying to sink the boat very easily, because we hear those loud quitters very much because they're vocal, or they can be engaged the other direction and become actively engaged and want to support. Remember, culture is cited as the top reason on why so many are disengaged. So there's your productivity, presenting that this is our opportunity for productivity. The other one in leadership is, a lot of the time they do not understand the connection with this an employee who is really satisfied and really actively engaged with a fantastic culture, and how that connects with the profit of the organization. So we need to connect it for them. What does productivity connect into? Quality. How does quality of product connect into sales, repeat sales, happy customers, right through to profit, happy shareholders because the profit is higher? That is a connection thread there, and we need to educate leaders about that. Also, we need to use hard facts always when we're talking about culture. Never a nice to have. What's the rationale for it? What are the facts that exist today? What are the figures? for our organization as well as the wider community. So this is a culture fact slide that we use, some gorgeous facts in here. As I mentioned, in Europe, 87% are not engaged, actively engaged. That's the 13%, 100 minus 13%. We have companies that focus on culture are 21% more profitable. That's the famous Harvard study. They studied over 11 years. So if we want this company to be successful long term, if we want to be 21% more profitable, we need to make sure that our culture is a focus for us. 4 times higher revenue, 20% less accidents in a company that has a better culture. 20% less accidents. Disengagement or poor culture is costing the global economy 8.8 trillion. How much is your organization throwing into that bucket of 8.8 trillion? Lower absenteeism is between engaged and disengaged employees. Remember those thriving at work and those loud quitters. The difference there is 41% absenteeism down here compared to the thriving at work. And 67% of execs believe that culture is more important than strategy or operations, but only 6% of time is spent on culture. Why do we think only 6% of time is spent on culture for leaders? Even though they believe it's more important than strategy or operations, if we even focus on the ones who know that culture is important, why do we think? Come on screen or type in the chat. Why do we think it's only 6%? Any ideas? Come on. I know you know. Any ideas why leaders only spend 6% on culture, and even though they believe it's more important than strategy and operations? Any ideas? Come on, I believe you know, you have some ideas.
I'm thinking regarding with the change of a culture, for example, it's that transition period, but also it might contradict what their objectives are, where if they have a really high objective at that moment, they're going to prioritize that with that deadline compared to taking a step back and seeing how they can improve ways of working.
And so you mean if they feel it's a conflict, Amy?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what example, do you have an example where you see that it could be a conflict?
Yeah, I think with the ways of working, I think looking at cultures of quality over quantity,
Yeah.
but then you've got a target that is extremely high in a short space of time, that would contradict.
Absolutely. So, you know, is what we're valuing really important to us? So that's where living the values, if we put quality is key as one of our values, and then we prioritize quantity over quality, then we literally take the legs out from under the table. We remove the foundation from the house. We go against the culture. And then we have to question really what is important to us. Maybe that is not our key value. And if we're putting that up there, maybe that's the wrong one. Are we really living the values as we need to today? So if it's conflicting, maybe our values are not correct, because, you know, not only is culture is strategy, the culture should underpin the strategy. What is the strategy? And the culture should underpin that, because that should be the thing that makes the strategy happen. So challenge a little bit if you do come across that going, so why is this in friction? Why is it in friction? Anna said, I think people think they're too busy, but great priority right now. I think people think they're too busy. Absolutely. I don't have the time for it. Or it's been fluffy. I don't actually know what to do. What should we do? What has the biggest impact? And also they don't know what works. They don't have that experience of what works, and they pick something and focus on that, and we'll do this initiative because something they heard was good, instead of having a real concrete plan on what they're doing. So taking the strategy, asking what the, is the culture underpinning this? Is it all going in the one direction, and aligning that, as Amy was saying? It can seem quite overwhelming. Absolutely. And that's really key to going on to our next one, is it can be absolutely, and it can be quite overwhelming. So it's really important, and this is where I think HR come in big, is gather and share the intel on where the organization's culture is today. What is the intel today? What does our culture say? What are our gems? What are those gorgeous things we want to hold on to? What are those shadows we want to eliminate? But what are the brass facts about our brass facts? The brass tacks, bring it down to brass tacks. What does our organization look like today? And some clarity on that helps going, this is our starting point. So now we know where to go from here. If we're not honest about our starting point, if we're not honest about where our strategy is going and how our culture can bring us there, because culture is strategy. So culture intel, do you know where your culture is at today? We talk about a culture intel dashboard, so it brings it all together. So, what is the engagement level of hourly versus salaried? How effective is your onboarding? And really measuring that. And it's really simple how to measure that. Why do our high performers stay in this organization? That's a really key one. We know the more you lose your high performers, the more in detriment that strategy is. And that's a great way of aligning, like Amy was saying, how do you align when the strategy doesn't align with the culture? How are we going to get our high performers to stay? Because we need them to make the strategy happen. What are those top 3 gems that we want to keep, and those 3 shadows we want to eliminate? Are we really clear about that? Are we all aligned about that? What do the leadership say? What do actually the people on the shop floor say? And how has the culture improved from last month? Can we show how the culture has improved from last month? Or are we waiting 1 year to do our big culture survey, and we all forget about culture until it comes up on the agenda again and we're doing a big culture survey? We say doing pulses month to month shows, where were we last month? What are our initiatives? Are they effective? This is where we are this month. Really really facts is really key to be able to show. And then you can have accountability. Who is accountable? If we know this team have these results and this team have these results, and our focus is to raise that bar, what do we need to be doing over here to support them? What do our people actually say about the culture? So not depending on surveys is really, really key. Surveys are one tool, just one tool of finding out about the culture intel. Just walk out on the shop floor and ask 5 people, what's great about working around here? What's not so great? What's one thing you would change? You will find out more in those 15 minutes than you will from any survey. You get real language around what they use. How many of your good leavers left in the last while? So have you calculated the true cost of the staff turnover into pounds? This is a great one for leadership. They love dollar figures, love pound signs. So what is it costing us? And I don't mean just the recruitment cost. I mean a really detailed of, how much HR time, the admin to get them on board, the time till they become productive, the recruiting, hiring, onboarding, time for training, meeting their mentors, the time managers have to give them. That should all be costed into staff turnover for hourly and salaried, worth doing it separately because it's kind of a different basis. So get that calculated. We have an Excel sheet, very simple Excel sheet with this listed. If you stay to the end, we'll share it with you so that you can calculate what's the true cost. There's nothing like saying to the leadership, in the leadership meeting, I've stood there as well going, right, guys, our turnover is, we started with 32% turnover when I started as operations director over 2 factories, 32%. It is costing us 732,000 a year. So if we reduce it, it will bring us down to X amount. We had that number. Nothing like talking in dollar figures. So I can save you guys $500,000 if we bring that figure down. But it's not just me. This takes us all to think about culture. And a lot of culture can be done without investment. A lot of culture does not take fancy systems. Always saying that. So anything we do in our culture accelerator should be able to be done without any investment into a fancy system. We say everything could be done. If you are bigger and you need a fancy system, brilliant. It makes it all easy. But even surveys can be done without fancy systems. So we talked about intel, knowing where you are. We talked about brass. I'm mad on brass today. Facts and figures and numbers for culture. We talked about aligning the leadership. Now it's about bringing clarity to the culture. Back to what Anna was talking about, that fluffy culture. What is our culture? Is it all up here? Or can we really clearly define what our culture is? So this is a construction company in London, Carey's. They have 4 lovely values about we care. Their name is Carey's, so they love that one. It matches their name. Humility, authenticity, and passion. And we took those values, and with a cross-section of the organization, we defined what that actually means. So what does it mean to be passionate? What does it mean to be humility? Talk to the guys on the construction site and they're like, what does that mean? So we made it really clear what we do around here and what we don't do around here. Like, so in humility, we own our mistakes. What we don't do, we don't blame others. It's really clear. So in my performance review, we now rate, Carey's now rate people on how they perform against these. Do you own your mistakes? It's really, really specific. Do you blame others? Yeah. Do you say thank you and well done? It's really important for them that they say thank you and well done. So how are you good at doing a thank you and well done? So being really clear on what you do and what you don't do. So that takes these nice words and bring it down to some detailed, teachable and measurable behaviors that you can measure and you can rate. That makes it really clear. So from month to month, so for example, we have one of our Culture Smarters in the Culture Smart Accelerator is focusing on improving feedback from managers. So they're doing a big initiative to get managers to give feedback. So every month they are pulsing against that to see, have you received feedback from your manager, valuable one-to-one feedback from your manager in the last month? What percentage have and what percentage haven't? That is so clear. There is no ambiguity and no fluffiness about that. We started at 25%, we're now on 32%, we're now going to 40%. That means only 40% of our managers are giving feedback and 60 are not. How are we going to raise that further? There is real clarity about that. Right. Tip number 4, have a culture plan. So the leadership have a sales plan, the leadership have a marketing plan, and this is where I believe HR are really key on helping HR or helping the leadership have a culture plan. We know instinctively it's important, we just don't know how to do it. We just don't know what we should be focusing on. So finding out where you are, having your intel helps you identify what we need to focus on, designing that purpose, values, and those behaviors, and then having a plan on how we're going to bring that alive, how are we going to embed it, and how are we going to measure it. That is clear. What is the culture plan for 2024? So every quarter on our Culture Smart Accelerator, we revise what's our culture plan for the next quarter. How does it fit in our year plan? What else do we need to be doing? And just picking 1 or 2 things we need to be doing to shift that culture along the continuum. Not overwhelming, because as Anna said, super overwhelming if we try and do everything. But if we're taking 1 step at a time, we're ensuring that continuum is not going negative, is not maintaining, but improving. So having a really clear culture plan. So does your organization have a culture plan? So as we talked about, Intel design, activate, embed, and measure are our 5 steps. And as part of our Culture Accelerator, we help you make a culture dashboard with no money. You don't need any money to make a culture dashboard. You can do it in 2 days. Gathering some info and getting it, and it is super powerful for leadership. Designing the culture, getting a culture plan in place, having your culture operating system, as we talk about, to ensure that it is embedded in every facet of the organization. And culture is a KPI, that is keeping that measurement up there so that it ensures that we know that culture is improving. So, any thoughts or questions, guys? Come on in or put them in the chat. Let me just open the chat here in front of me again. Any questions or thoughts? What resonated? I realize I blasted a lot of information there. Come on screen, come off mute, or put in the chat.
I think for myself, sorry, I just wasn't clear on how to measure. And I think, like you said, for the leadership team to see actual, KPIs along the creating the culture board is really important. And it's actually something then people start believing in because they see the results. And I think for HR, some of us, for me personally, I just didn't know how to do that. And then you don't know where to start and it becomes a bit overwhelming.
Absolutely. And that is the where do you start? What are you measuring? And that's really key on, starting with the intel and finding out where you are now and what are the areas that you want to improve. What are the 3 key areas that we're going to focus on? So that can help you. Your survey can help you identify those, going out and talking to people, looking on Glassdoor, what are people complaining about, gathering all that in and finding out and identifying and then tackling those areas and then measuring those areas. But that dashboard, as you say, Natalie, is really key because it's so powerful to see we're doing this and this is the result. And this is how we're improving or we're not improving. So we need to do something else if we're not improving. Really, really powerful. And that's where pulses can be super, super powerful. Really great, Natalie. Any other thoughts or questions? Very quiet this morning. So our Culture Smart Accelerator, I've mentioned it a few times. We have an engage and learn live. So we have live coaching sessions, a little bit like this, where we talk through a topic, but when we take it apart about where you are and how you do it, and we show you how to gather that intel, what to do with that intel, how to pick what to prioritize, how to measure, how to design your values. We even give you the facilitation guide to run a behavior session that we use when we work as consultants. So that's the great thing. And then also hearing what other people have to say. It's always great when you hear how others have dealt with it. And that's that collaborate and connect. So on our sessions, we make sure, and we have a community and a platform where we can share and you can ask others, how did you do this? Can you share your behaviors with me? And then we have our online academy, which walks through each of these 5 stages so you can go into depth in them as well. So you have your live coaching and your online academy, whichever one you want to use more. And we record everything which goes into the online academy so you don't miss anything ever. And we also have bonus material in there. We do leadership development masterclasses. We're leadership coaches. So we love a little bit of that. We give you the employee survey that you can take and use, the exact one that we use, for example, in Bailey's. And we also have that culture building blueprint on how to do it step by step that you can use as well. So they're all bonuses that you get as you join. Here is Alan. They did their pulses and they got some fantastic results. He was one of our earliest Culture Smarters, and he's still in our alumni in our Culture Smart. So if any of this resonated and you want to know a little bit more or how we could tackle your culture, or just what you want to actually let me just put this in the chat. book on for a culture planning session. They're free, they're one-to-one, and we can talk about where your culture is at and what you should focus on. Jump on and find an hour and book on. It's a really easy system to use. You just pick it, put in your email, and find a time that works for you and book on. Great, I see you're already booking in. Brilliant. There's some times next week, I believe, still available. And then let's quickly go around. If you come on off mute, come on the screen, and we'll just wrap up. We want to have impact. So what's one gem you will take away and one action you will do as a consequence of this presentation? And we want to make sure we always have impact. So this is one of our values. So, and Natalie, I see you're off on mute, so I'll start with you and then I'll come to you, Satish.
Yeah.
To me, it's about the measurable side that I said already, and I think it's really important to do that so it's visible for people to see and they actually see the impact of the change.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Love it, Natalie. Love it. So we'll be dying to hear how your measuring is going. Satish.
Yeah, I just want to implement the culture dashboard and to design the culture and everything.
Fantastic. And what's one action you're going to take, Satish, now? One thing you're going to do?
I think that's what I said. Like, I just want to implement the dashboard.
You're going to make one of the culture dashboards. Fantastic. Love it, Satish. That's it. And that is really powerful, having that information available like that. Super. Shazia, and then I'll come to you, Anna. Are you able to talk, Shazia? Are you in the car? I think you might be in the car. We'll let you come off mute. Anna, do you want to come off and...
Well, my first action was to book one of these meetings, which I've just done.
Fantastic.
And I think
Love
what I want to do is I want to share some of the slides, particularly the ones around the Gallup stats with our executive committee. We've got a meeting next week, so I want to be able to share that because they do like the facts and the figures.
Oh, love it, Anna. Love it. Super powerful. And Ian and Joseph are part of our team. Shazia, I'm guessing you must be driving, so we won't. You've been on one of our masterclasses before, so you need to share with us, share with me after what you were going to do. So, guys, fantastic. I apologize. We kept you 5 minutes over. You've been brilliant. Book in and we can talk about culture planning for you and your role and your organization, and we can share the culture smart accelerator and see is that a fit for you, but we'd love to talk more about the culture. Okay, thank you so much, guys, and I'll sign you off now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy. Thank you, Anna.
Bye.
Bye, Natalie. Bye, Shazia. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Joseph.